Welcome to Wild and Exposed, your number one adventure, nature, and outdoor photography podcast. Wild and Exposed is hosted by Mike Mauro, Ron Hayes, Jason Loftus, and Mark Raycroft. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to another episode of Wild and Exposed. This week, your hosts are Michael Mauro, coming to us once again from beautiful Colorado, Jason Loftus from Utah, equally striking landscape, and me, Mark Raycroft from Ontario, Canada, where it does feel like winter for one of the first times this year. Gentlemen, it's good to see your faces. We have a friend of the podcast on this week, a guest that you will recognize from here or there, from a trip to Alaska, where we enjoyed his company for 2 weeks. That you can go back and hear about that on our podcasts, on his podcast, well, on his YouTube, little YouTube channel out there, on our YouTube channel. This gentleman is a professional YouTube content creator, full-time, something that, we all thrive on, creating storytelling content, whether it's through photos or video, being creative, the pressure of that as a professional. We appreciate Shawn James joining us today. As you very likely know, he has 2 YouTube channels, my Self Reliance and the Shawn James channel. And we are especially grateful for his company this week because he has, I believe, chosen us to help him bump his subscribership from 1,981,000 subscribers to the 2 million, thanks to being on our show. Right, Shawn?
Oh, yes.
Let's hope that happens.
Well, thanks for having me on again. I think this is the third time?
Yep.
Well, the last, it'd be the third time. I had the privilege of visiting you at your cabin the first time. And I was going to say something really funny. You kept me there. It was good. We had a nice long visit. It was a lot further than I thought when I got there. Yeah. So I was tired, but it was fun. And then you came to Alaska with us, and that's something we could touch on a little bit today. But things have continued to evolve for you. Mm-hmm. It's awesome to see. I think if I remember correctly, when we did our Alaska trip, where you went and visited Richard or Dick Pernacki's cabin. Phenomenal story on your YouTube. Well done. But I think you're around 750,000 subscribers on YouTube at that point.
Was that right?
And to see where you are now and how it keeps growing, I mean, it's something that we as a collective, and I know a lot of our audience, YouTube's such a big factor these days out there, whether they're content creators themselves or aspiring content creators. It's just like so many other platforms to get to know and be experienced at. So we're grateful to have some of your time, because you did share a lot of information with us on the Alaska trip, which we're grateful for as well.
Yeah,
you're in Ontario, Canada too. We're like neighbors, 6 hours, 7 hours apart.
Yeah, that's a lot has changed since I didn't realize. Yeah, it's probably right. 750,000 subs back then, and lots changed in my life since then, and lots changed on the channel. And I think lots probably changed in social media and the way we capture things and share. I think a lot has changed since then as well.
How much has changed on the YouTube channel since then? Can you think back to like things that have changed, or do you think it's been just pretty consistent? I mean, you're still producing the same content, right? Not the same content, but you're still producing the same style, but you've gained a huge number of subscribers. What do you attribute that to? Do you think it's the algorithm and your content, or what is it?
I think in general, I haven't looked at the statistics to see how many people are watching YouTube in general, like overall, compared to what's it been, 16, 18 months ago, 19 months ago, something like that. I would think there's probably a lot more viewers. And of course, since last March with the pandemic, we've seen an uptick in people sitting at home, just watching anything, consuming any kind of content. And there's presumably been quite a bit less content being created for traditional mainstream media, like movies, for example. You can't go to a movie theater. So unless something was already in production and was in the edit process, I would imagine not much got filmed during that period. And then again, right now, possibly. So I think that's a boom or a boon for content creators on the platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and some of the others that are coming up. So I think that's one part of it. And then there's a huge sort of people leaving the cities for like physically, but also mentally, like looking for an escape to get out of their daily lives and make changes because they've been so affected by this pandemic. So I see a lot of people signing in and reaching out to me personally to get more information on how do you change your life like this? How do you go down this different path? How do you maybe create an income source, online or working from home? How do you get out of the city and into the country? Like so many, and then how do you just please just let me watch you do something that I can't do with my life? I think that's become pretty significant. People want to de-stress. That's part of what I do, is provide that. And then the other thing is I have a lot more competition than I did a year and a half ago. So that's, when you get into something a little bit ahead of the curve and creating the kind of content that I'm doing before, it got oversaturated. When somebody else creates this kind of content, all it does is actually create more interest in the overall genre, and people come to my channel because it's one of the bigger ones that gets promoted. So that's a lot of change.
Before we go too far, can you just give us an idea of what your channel is, how you describe your channel to somebody that isn't familiar with it? Or, some of our audience, we all just assume everybody knows just because it's such a popular channel. But what is it that you do, and what is it that what kind of content are you putting out?
So that's funny because people ask me that question. I always stumble and say the wrong thing, or I just say something the way I think about it. To me, it's just my lifestyle. And that I think is the broader category. It's just lifestyle. So I'm filming myself doing what I do every day, and it happens to be mostly off-grid, sort of wilderness, self-reliance, homesteading, hunting and fishing and photography and all these things. So overall, I would say it's outdoors oriented and self-reliance. I mean, the title, when I came up with it many years ago, wasn't really what it ended up. I didn't really anticipate me actually going off grid and doing all these things in the wilderness, because at the time I was still raising a family in still a little village outside of the city and trying to do things like gardening and things like that. But it's evolved. I've evolved, and the channel kind of evolved with me to just present this outdoor, self-reliant lifestyle, independence, resilience. Resilience is a big thing, a big word right now. Like, I think that describes the channel pretty well, is how do you become more resilient? And I just like to show that. But my passion is the outdoors. So at least 50%, maybe 40% of my content is capturing nature. So the wildlife and the water and the weather and all of those things that I just experience every day. I try to capture as much of that as possible because I love it. And then I get to show that to people who never get to see that or rarely get to see it. And I get to allow nature to be the thing that people can experience vicariously and de-stress by watching it. If that's a description of the channel, I don't know how you'd put that.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And I would just add to that it's you're kind of a hybrid as far as what you're doing, right? Because sometimes you're using modern type things, like you might use a 4-wheeler, or you might use a snowmobile, or you might use something like that to haul some stuff around. But everything that you're building with human power, right? You're using hand saws, you're using hand drills, you're using ingenuity. You're not going to a computer to draw plans to say, oh, I think I'm going to build this from this architectural drawing. So
very organic. It's very organic. My life is very organic, and the process, how I capture it and share it, is very organic. There's nothing planned. People ask me, and I got plans for the cabin that you built. I'm like, seriously, I couldn't tell you tomorrow. Like, literally, I'm working on a workshop right now, and I did stuff today that I had no idea I was going to do because I looked at my materials in front of me and thought, what am I going to do with this? And it's so freeing to be able to do something, not following a plan, not following like a code that somebody's created. Self-reliance is literally just letting your mind be as creative as possible and then putting that into form. So that's a special thing. And I think people connect with that, and I know that's what gives me passion. And I have endless content for that reason, because I'm so passionate about these things that I'm doing. But the hand tools, I don't go on about. I don't specifically say I'm all into hand tools, because to me, it's all about just connecting with the material and the process. Whether it's hand tools or power tool, I choose hand tools because it allows me to, I have to follow the grain of the wood, for example, or I need to. If I'm walking through the woods, I'm experiencing nature on a much higher, more detailed level than if I'm on a four-wheeler or snowmobile traveling through that landscape. So to me, it's doing as much old-fashioned it happens to be in the old ways, but only because of that connection, not because I romanticize this harder work, because that's typically what it ends up being. I just like that connection.
I love watching it because I love watching just the process. It's almost kind of like a relaxing thing. And oftentimes I find myself watching you do stuff and it's like, I wonder what he's going to do next, or what.
Me too.
I wonder why he made that cut doing that, or it's just fun to watch. How much have you learned? So how long, your channel's been around for what, 10 years?
No, I think my first video was it 15 or 16, 2015 or 16.
Okay, so like 6 years.
If you were to go back and look at when the channel started, it's only because I created an account to watch other people's stuff. I didn't have videos in 2013 when the the name went live. I started uploading in 15, and I think it was mostly canoeing. So it was canoeing and fishing. And then the out hunting video. And then 4 years ago, May is when I started the cabin and the off-grid lifestyle.
So you've been building this content for a long time. One thing that I think about a lot when I watch your stuff, it's, as you continue to build new structures or new things, it's like, okay, he built this, let's say you built a bathhouse, right? At one point. So you obviously learned a ton of stuff there, but then now you're building a new structure. How much knowledge do you gain from the old build? And you're like, on my next construction project, I'm going to do this completely different and way more efficient. There's got to be tons of aha moments throughout every day, right? Where you're like, oh, this would be so much easier if I did it this way. Or is that the case? That's the way I think about it when I watch it.
Yeah. So it goes even further back. So when I was young, I lived in a small town on the north end, about an hour north of Toronto. And we lived on the edge of that town, so I'd walk into the forest, farmland to the north of me, and we'd build little shelters and stuff. But when I was 21, I ended up with a property that I bought, just, some money in construction. The land was cheap. I drove 2.5 hours every weekend to get to this place. I built a cabin there by hand, mostly alone again, and just loved it. And ended up getting married and kind of, we sold that and moved on. But my wife and I went back and visited that 4 years ago, just before, probably 4 years ago now, actually. So before I started the cabin, I saw the cabin again. It was still standing. Somebody else bought it and built a house next to it, and they were using it as a shed, but they allowed me to go and look at it. I was looking at it, it's like, this was awesome, but this part rotted and that part rotted. So I got video and photos of it, and thought that was awesome as a little hunt camp for me and some buddies back then. So I already started learning at that point, okay, what would I change when I started the next one? But when I started the cabin 4 years ago, I was still living in a little town, little village with my family, and just going up and doing this on weekends and getting more and more passionate about it. To the point, it's like, okay, I want to do this life. Like, this is the life of my dreams. I always wanted to do this, and I'm going to start building this thing. Built the cabin. I wanted to do it small, and my wife got involved and convinced me to double the size, because I was just going to do a little trapper's cabin. So a little bit of family influence at that point, but it still wasn't the idea to live in the thing or to create a whole homestead where you could survive off this property. So it kept going, but because of that process, it wasn't looked at as a homestead. It was looked at as just little projects. It wasn't planned. It wasn't a long-term thing. It became that, but it was missing certain things. So now when I'm looking at the place that I'm building now, it's like, okay, these are the things I know I need to live comfortably. And I know that my family is going to be here a lot more than I ever anticipated. So it needs to be a full-time residence. So lots of things need to change. So each of the buildings, I tried to use slightly different techniques so that I could apply those and improve on those on the next thing. So the workshop I'm building right now, completely different, more of a timber frame style with square timbers. I wanted to use that because I plan on in the bigger cabin to use some of those principles incorporated into the log cabin. Outdoor kitchen needs to be closer, needs to be more, integrated with the main building. I need, the sauna needs a better water source. The bathhouse needs a better water source. So these are all the things I get to correct this time.
It's got to be fun.
Super excited about it.
Oh, I love it. And it big part of me is fed by similar perspectives and appreciations in life. And I know that your audience is more than excited for all this transformation and to see what you do next on the new property. And just, it's very cool to explore the property with you and learn about it with you, and then to see what you'll do with that. And I know that I have friends of mine that, and not to say that I don't, my buddy here, but they absolutely love your show and just can't wait to do exactly what you described for a lot of the audience that don't have. It's just like with our wildlife photography or videography professions, a lot of people don't have the privilege to come along and experience that because of lifestyle, because any number of restrictive reasons in their day-to-day routines. You made the choice to go and leave the big city and the stress of that lifestyle and to simplify and be self-reliant. And it does appeal to so many people around the globe. So it's very exciting to see what you're going to do. And I know that it's been probably really helpful for a lot of people to unplug and just watch what you're doing and get in that nature vibe and wilderness that they cannot do where they live.
Mm-hmm.
And especially this year. So hats off to you. And I've it's fantastic. From where I sit professionally, and as I work on the Wild and Exposed YouTube channel and on the social media and want to do everything I can to be the most effective collaborator that I can be to get these to grow. And not, it's just the same kind of thing, to outreach to people who can't or don't have the good fortune to have these experiences. I'm passionate about sharing that. Our team is passionate about, we would love to take you vicariously through our social media channels to Alaska, to the coast, to feel that. And maybe someday you'll be able to do it yourselves. But if not, at least that we can share this appreciation and why it resonates with us. So there's a similar vibe, albeit a slightly different content to what you're producing, but you do have a significant nature portion, wildlife portion, which I personally hope you and I can do more in the future because of the places I know we can, access wildlife to create content. But I watch your show from the perspective of admiring the success, but how you create it. And I think that's something that so many listeners of Wild and Exposed podcast or who watch our YouTube channel, go watch this on YouTube, and can learn from it themselves. I mean, there's so many ways that we can record and produce content now, whether it's smartphones, whether it's GoPros, action cameras, whether it's DSLRs, whether it's mirrorless. I know the last time that we hung out, it was right before you switched to mirrorless. So part of today's podcast, we'd love to hear how that's working for you. But from the Wild and Exposed audience, I know a lot of the audience will just like hearing your behind the scenes, but also some of the creative sides of your workflow because you're so successful. There's the YouTube component, which you can share any super secret ninja tactics, as Michael Mauro likes to say, with us, and I'll be very grateful as far as how YouTube works. But it's also I think, important, just like we say to our audience, when they go watch Planet Earth or any show on BBC or any network that they really enjoyed, watch it the first time for the pure enjoyment, but you need to watch it several times if you want to be a successful content creator, to train one's eye on the edits, on how it was filmed. Was it, your drone footage, when you introduced drones to your show, so you could get that perspective of zooming up or down from the cabin or coming in across this epic wilderness landscape where you've homesteaded, to show people that perspective. I would wager that helped boost things quite a bit when that started becoming a visual tool.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to hear how you're doing it these days, what cameras you're using, if it's just a whole variety, and as far as creating the content. But just to summarize on what Michael started this question to me, it's great what you're doing for people where they can share, that de-stress. There's nothing like, we said this with Tim Irvin a few weeks ago when he did the Flips the Script first podcast of the year on us. This year, to go for a walk in the woods, to take an hour out of the day, or wherever park or wherever lake shore, wherever people are right now, it really, to me, there's nothing that calms and gives perspective on all kinds of things by just having that time in nature and experiencing things. And you live that firsthand and take people there. So that's fantastic. So that aside, the high fives, the mirrorless cameras, what's a day look like on your one-man show set? How do you pull it off and do so exceptionally well? What's it look like behind the scenes?
I think it's important just to step back maybe a little bit. Like, people, of course, ask me about starting up a YouTube channel, or you even get a lot of the smaller creators kind of chatting in the background amongst themselves about why is this guy more successful.
I'm saying, if you watch YouTube, that's us. We're getting there. We want to grow this, right?
Well, there's some resentment even, right? Because
not here.
Wrongfully, people think, okay, they're getting all the preferential treatment by the platform. Their videos are getting promoted and so on. But it takes a long time to get to that point. But you have to look really, it's hard, even for myself, of course, throughout my YouTube career, if you can call it a career, got to look hard at yourself and be able to criticize yourself, but also listen to the criticism from your audience. And there's always little things that somebody that's got a more successful channel in the same genre might be doing that you're not doing. And honestly, a lot of it has to do with authenticity and passion. Like, I see a lot of, the vlogging type channels and, guys that I have respect for and do well, like them trying to come up with content every week. I see the struggle. They talk about the struggle of coming up with content, and it's because they're creating something that's sort of forced. It's interesting. They're good at it, and they're passionate to some degree, but you can't be passionate about, a huge variety of things. I like the lifestyle genre because I'm filming something I'd be doing every day with my life anyway. This is where it started. When I started filming, it wasn't even for YouTube. I didn't even know I didn't know it was a career. I didn't know you can make money off of YouTube, and I didn't know it did anything other than help sort of promote your website or something else. But because I was doing it anyway, I was filming it, and then I started slowly learning how to edit that into something watchable. But it started with the passion. It started with the lifestyle that I was able to do every single day. And there's so many things, like 4 years ago, if I had told you where I would be at this point in my building of the homestead and the off-grid or self-reliant lifestyle, I would have told you I was going to be way ahead of what I am now. So to all the things I have in my head right now that I want to do with my life, I don't have enough years. I just turned 50 this year. I'll be 51 this April. And it's like 20 years left maybe of, enough strength to create stuff and to, I want gardens. I want permaculture. I want have a lot more acreage now. I want that whole thing to be productive for wildlife and for aesthetics and for food production for myself and my family. These things take time, and I'm looking at it like, how much time do I have to really do this? And I know already a lot of the trees I'm planting, for example, are not going to be enjoyed by myself. It'll be for future generations. But I'm so passionate about all of it. I know I would never run out of content. What bothers me every day is that I haven't created enough. I haven't done enough, and I haven't captured enough, and haven't shared enough. So that's where it has to start. To like for somebody to say, just want to be a YouTuber, I don't even know where to start. It's like, you better start with passion in your life, not because of YouTube, but how about just, choosing to lead an inspirational life for you, not for YouTube. And then once you do that, once you make that decision to make decisions in your life, like I did, to quit a corporate job, I didn't have YouTube as a fallback. I quit that before YouTube. It's like, I don't like the path I'm going down. I'm going to change my life, and I'm going to lead a life that every day I'm excited to get up and live. And honestly, that's still the way I am every single day. I can't sleep most of the time because I can't wait to get up and do that thing. So content is like, not like I usually edit about a 35 to 45 minute video for every Friday. I was finding I had so much content that I wanted to share, so much more talking I wanted to do and to share, that I had to create a second channel just specifically for that, so I could do frequent uploads during the week without kind of overwhelming my Self Reliance audience. So that's how that came about. And I film probably, I don't know, 10 hours a week of footage, probably more. And I condense it down to maybe an hour and a half total amongst the two channels. So my process is get up in the morning, depending on where I am. I'm getting the cameras, making sure they were plugged in overnight. So I've got the batteries all charged up. I'm ready to go. I get out and I just start doing my day. And I've got a phone in my pocket if it's something that I can't carry a tripod and camera, because I have to have a tripod for filming. And I'm using that phone, but almost always that camera and tripod is an extension of my body and everything I do. I've got an axe in one hand and a camera in the other, or a gun in one hand if I'm hunting, or a fishing rod, but there's a camera is always there. And the dog knows how to work around the camera. My off days, if I'm not working on something or building this homestead or Self-Reliance, my wife and I are out filming B-roll, because that's what we love. That's our hobby. Our date days are us out there filming, and we love it. Like, so passionate about it. We're just thrilled to do that, and thrilled to can't wait to look at that footage and get it edited and see what we captured. Like, it's so much passion that it has to start with that. So process. Right after, I think it was right after that trip. Yeah, right after I went out to Alaska with you guys, my camera gear was stolen out of my truck. So, $20,000 worth of Canon equipment, including the 1DX, lenses, tripod, all kinds of stuff. So I had to basically look at what I was going to get for insurance and decide, do I go back down that same path again with equipment that's starting to get old, like outdated, or do I look at more seriously at this mirrorless stuff? Mike, actually, I texted you. I was standing in the camera store, like, what do I do, Mike? Are you far enough down this path that you can give me a good recommendation? And before you even answered me, I had decided and bought it. So that was the Sony what would that be? A7
S3 or A7R4?
Not even no A7 just 3. I don't think it. No, I didn't get the R.
So the A7 III.
Yeah, because I think the R has a higher.
Yeah, it's a bigger megapixel.
Yeah, so that's better for film, for photos, and I was looking for a better film camera. Right. So anyway, I got that and bought another one like a month later, because I always need redundancy in case one breaks down. And loving it. Got a couple lenses for those, and haven't used the Canon gear since. So I'm 100% mirrorless.
So is it surviving? I mean, I think one of the big problems that people thought might happen with this mirrorless is it's more delicate, right? It's not as beefy, it's not as robust. Do you and you, I'm sure your cameras get put through the ringer.
but there's certain, I can't imagine anybody who abuses their cameras worse than I do. Like, think about the outdoor stuff that you do, but imagine sawdust, a dog knocking the tripod over out in a canoe and it falls in the lake. That's happened to me with the Canon. Mud, rain. I'm filming always, so like pouring rain on these cameras, and I still have those original two A7Ss or A7 IIIs. And just recently in December, finally got in the mail the A7S3. So all of them are working perfectly fine. And that the A9 is actually the professional one that's supposed to be better weather sealed, I think, too, right?
Yeah,
So
it's more of a stills camera, I think.
Yeah.
Or it's just more productive as stills.
Yeah. But no, this stuff's worked fantastic. The only thing I still haven't really perfected. We've talked a lot about audio in the past. I still am not as happy with the audio performance, my audio that I'm getting out of these cameras compared to my Canon.
And so for audio, are you doing everything that's just tied right into the camera, or do you sync everything later where you record on the camera just for a scratch track, but you also have a different microphone going?
I can't get into that because it just adds so much editing time that I have the Zoom or whatever it's called. I think you have the same one.
Right.
You guys use, and I'll use that for background audio. Like I'll just leave it by a stream or near some birds or something, and I'll use that for background. But I just finding that syncing it is just too much effort. So I don't do that. So I just have a Rode Go mic on top of one camera, and it broke down and bought the expensive Sony digital mic for the other camera. And I'm just not finding it as good.
And is that just because of the distance sometimes when you're further away from the working? Or is it what don't you like about it?
Well, the Go mic, the Rode Go, I had that on the Canon, same mic, and I still found that it was clearer. I could go further distance and still have it clear. And then if I turn up the I don't even know all the technical terms, but if I turn up the sensitivity or whatever, I just get more hum on the Sony than I got on the Canon.
Oh, right.
And this is all probably just me. Like I'm not, super tech guy, and I don't spend enough time. Like I get a camera in the box and I'm filming with it that day and haven't even looked at the specs or how I should be using it. So I'm a horrible guy to give a recommendation on that, specifications on each camera, but functionally, that's my observation. The footage is better. In general, the footage from the Sony, at least mirrorless, because that's all I've used for mirrorless. I'm finding it's better than any of the footage I've ever captured, and the autofocus is incredible. And they have a wider range of lenses that I can use that are silent. Because one of my issues with Canon, there was only one or two lenses that I could use that were quiet enough to film with.
And the reasoning there is sometimes you'll hear the motors in the lens, and so that microphone will pick that up. And then if you watch Shawn's channel, it's mostly just his main channel, My Self Reliance, is basically just natural sounds and what you're doing. You don't talk very much. I mean, occasionally you'll talk at the end of a video, right?
Yeah.
So it's all just nat sound that's building this whole thing. So, and he really does awesome work with the nat sound to help tell that story. And it just goes to show how important audio is when you're actually building something. So I can see why you're concerned about making sure you're getting that quality audio.
Well, and I get complaints if I put music in my videos over top of what I'm doing because the audience is used to that and they prefer it. But I've had so many issues in the last year and a half trying to perfect this audio issue that I'm putting music in typically because I've messed up the audio somehow.
Right.
It might be a hum or something that I just, I can't get rid of. Again, if I was could hand this over to a super experienced editor, or I learned it myself and spent a week or a month on a video to edit it, I could probably figure all that out. But I get my footage. So let's say I collect it all during the week. I release a video every Friday morning, typically on the main channel, the longer video. I have to have that edited sometimes within, I maybe start editing it just a few hours before it gets uploaded. I don't have time to go in there and perfect audio or, it's a lot of things that I could do. I could do better transitions. I could do, better syncing maybe with music and a bunch of other things this is a high volume game, the social media these days. Quality is important, but if you can't get the volume out, then it's hard to get any traction.
I got more questions, but I don't want to cut you guys off. Go ahead. Jason, we're like totally going right over. We're not giving you a place to speak.
Well, this is the first time I've actually got to chat with Shawn, so I've been following the channel for a while. But I think just to kind of comment, maybe I don't know if I have a lot of questions to be honest, but I'm intrigued with this whole process you're describing. But for me, what I get out of your channel is that just relaxing and watching, everything unfold, and to me, a little bit of the problem solving too. I enjoy watching that unfold, and like what's he gonna do? I think Mike mentioned it, but what's he gonna do next? How's he gonna do that? So that aspect of it to me is kind of fun to watch. I don't know if I'll ever be, doing my self-reliance or building my own cabin or building my own furniture or anything like that, but it's still very relaxing. It really is. When I first started watching it and following along, I didn't know that if I would actually enjoy it and want to continue to watch, but it just sucks you in, and it's very enjoyable in a very positive way. It's very enjoyable and relaxing. So,
Thank you.
Well, I think that's what speaks to building the content too. I mean, I was going to say that earlier. It's why. So yeah, you didn't go to school for photography or videography, but you figured out how to tell a story, and I think that's the most important part, right? You don't have to have the most perfect camera. Obviously, you got some perfect cameras, but you still have issues with them because of just the technical things. And there's so much. If you wanted to be an expert on the camera, you wouldn't have time to build a cabin. So,
yeah,
I think go ahead.
Well, I've become passionate about the filming and the photography. Like actually before YouTube, I had some success on Facebook with my photos, and my wife's photos. Actually, we're taking a lot of nature and canoeing type stuff and selling calendars, and I really love that. And it kind of actually before that, I had like a little PowerShot Canon. I didn't even know how to use that properly, and never off of automatic. So this was like, I'm diving right in with a Canon 80D was the first camera I got, which was one of the best filming DSLRs you could get at that time. It's cheap, like a crop sensor, fairly cheap camera, but it was just perfect for vlogging. And that's, I think, what it was designed for. So I learned on that and progressed from that. I could still be using that camera to this day. It's just that I like the quality of the professional finish that I get from just a better camera. It's not necessary to tell the story, but when YouTube started really promoting 4K and I jumped into 4K myself, really, Mike, I think maybe you were kind of inspired me to do that when I was out there. You should be future proofing your footage. And I found even with the Alaska stuff, I didn't have it all in 4K, and I'm regretting it now because I'm creating 4K, trying to create compilation videos from that period and meshing it with other footage. And I wish it was higher quality.
Right.
So that is why I keep getting these new cameras and keep evolving my skills and the quality of the equipment, just so I can now look on a huge screen, because that's the other thing. People's screens are getting bigger and you can look at it and see every detail. And the reason I got this A7S III is the 4K 120. Because I love that slow motion stuff, especially with wildlife, and now to be able to get it in 4K, amazing. Like I got some, I don't know if you saw last week's video of the buck really up close, like his head filled the frame and it's licking and every detail is just beautiful. So that's what I've become passionate about, is not just the capturing and the vlogging on the YouTube channel, but how can I immerse people fully into that experience through really high quality footage?
And I think that's the point I was trying to make earlier. I think my point is you started out with not a lot of knowledge, but you had the storytelling capabilities. And now through the evolution of that, you've learned how to use the cameras and you've learned how to maximize that, which just enhances the storytelling stuff that you already had. So now you're to a point where you have a lot of it dialed in, and I still have problems with audio. I still have problems with technical stuff all the time. And I'm like, I've been doing this for so many years. You would think you would have figured most things out, but the equipment changes, things change, menus change, all this stuff changes constantly. You just got to stay on top of it. And to produce what you're producing is you're right there with the best of them.
Well, you have to, like, for my type of content, it's a very uncontrolled environment. So today I started off think it was minus 12 or something when it was started working, and then it got mild and everything's kind of steaming up and overheating, and then it started snowing heavy. So my dead cats are like, can't even see them. It's just a big white snowball on top. So, and then I take it inside the workshop where I'm cutting something and there's sawdust. Like, there's so many variables to deal with that it's hard to control all of them. At some point, you just have to let go your that perfection that you'd like to get as a filmmaker, and just realize that. I think I answered this question maybe in Alaska, and you asked me about. I think Mark, you asked me what's the highest ISO I'll go up to. Infinite, because it's the story that I'm telling. It's not trying to capture a perfect image that has to get blown up and enlarged and printed out. It's about, you can't miss that footage because ISO was too high, or it was too dusty, or the camera wasn't perfectly focused, or too much snow in the lens. You just shoot it all, and then figure out how to make it work once you get it to the editing table.
I think that's the beautiful thing about YouTube. YouTube is like it's not Hollywood, and it's not your beginner. It's kind of a meld of everything in the middle. And I don't think people expect Hollywood production quality on YouTube. I think people like that grittier kind of feel because I think it tells a more real story, right? So I think it lends itself to that sort of a production.
So one of the things, like if I'm going to give tips, or just through the conversation, if anybody wants to do this and is trying to pick stuff up, I see people trying too hard to force a story, and they're scripting it, and then they're either scripting the activity or scripting the actual words, and they're trying to remember. It's like saying a speech when you're in like grade 7, and you're trying to remember what's written down on the paper, and you stumble more than if you just got up and just spoke freely. So just like preparing for that speech, like learn your content, learn your passion, and just speak from the heart instead of following that script. And try not to do that with what you're creating. That don't create a thing just for the sake of the video. Create that thing because you want it in your life, and then film that process as you're doing that. And then you're not as striving for as much of that perfection, or that and ending up with that fake look. Like, you have to be authentic about it.
Mark, I cut you off earlier. What did you have to say?
That's okay. I'm going off in different. Shawn, you have a deer that's licking in front of you, slow motion, and you don't text me to come and photograph with you. Okay, there's number one. All right, I won't even give you a chance to answer that. So the other thing, just 90% of the audience will know what a dead cat is that you're working with, but for the 10% that don't, a dead cat on your set, or not your set, in your where you're filming is simply the cover over your microphone, right? To block the wind. Everybody needs a dead cat.
Callie chased a cat down.
Okay, so that's the upcoming clip that people can look forward to. This week is something to do with the dead cat on the homestead. I see. Was it a lynx?
Subscribers.
That's on far enough north.
I was going to contact you and tell me we got to find a lynx this winter. That's still on my bucket list.
Oh, let's do that. How much fun would that be?
Yeah.
I know where there are some, but it's a bit of a drive.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of a drive.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Like Alaska drive?
No, not that far.
In the province.
So there's so many things to talk about with the YouTube. But quickly, when you're filming, I assume that the Sony mirrorless cameras you're using have the articulating rear screen that you are, or are you just so used to filming you know where your screen presence is, or do you have that so you can see as you're vlogging?
So that was a sacrifice when I went from the Canon, or the Canon Mark, or whatever, 1DX Mark II, I think it was. That did not have an articulating screen, and I got used to using that. But I mostly just use that for B-roll, so I was behind the camera. The last Canon sort of vlogging everyday camera I used was the 7D, I think. Anyway, that was a really good camera that had an articulating screen. None of the mirrorless don't think had it. So when I went to Sony, these two Sonys don't have an articulating screen, just a tilting. And that was very, very hard to get used to. And meant shooting a lot of scenes where headspace was all off. I was either low screen, high screen, or whatever. So I started backing off, shooting at 4K so that I could crop it in a little bit. This A7S3, they finally fixed that and came out with an articulating screen. So I'm back to being able to film myself properly.
That's a big difference, right? Just for confidence and lack of repetition, I would think. Yeah. Oh, so as far as camera equipment, it sounds like you're using those Sonys for the vast majority of your filming. But when you're doing adventures like the canoeing and you're taking people with you, where it's not a stationary situation where you have a tripod, are you utilizing GoPros a lot? Like, we know you use the drones for those captivating clips, but how often do you use action cameras?
Yeah, well, I crashed the drone, so I ended up having to replace it with the Mavic Air 2, which is finding it's actually best one of the three now. Finding I use that every day almost. I try to get some B-roll footage. The GoPro, it's funny because the new Apple cameras are pretty good. My iPhones are pretty good until you get them up on the screen beside your 4K footage from a DSLR. And it's like, use this. I just spent half the day filming with the phone, and I'm throwing that.
Okay. And the 12? Are you using the 12?
11 Pro Max, I think it is.
Okay, good. I just got the 12 Pro Max, so I'm hoping it's not already. Yeah, okay.
Oh,
I'm all excited about the 4K footage I'm seeing on it. But
well, it's fine for the quality that you put out.
Oh, okay.
It's perfectly fine, and for most people, it's fine. It just doesn't marry well with the DSLR footage.
I'm making a snowball to throw at my Mac screen right now.
Okay. It's fine. I'm finding the same though with the GoPro, honestly. So I'll use it. I'm basically willing to sacrifice a DSLR in the canoe.
Okay.
I'm using
it's that big a difference. The DSLRs, if you can manage it over the action cameras or iPhone, it's still do it.
I'm only using the GoPro when I wouldn't be able to, I'm not going to hang the DSLR over the canoe or put it underwater, obviously, right? So I use it for that, but I don't think I've had it even charged in 6 months.
Okay.
Really? Do you think that's a function of light quality though too? Where I always get the feeling like if I've got really good light, the iPhone tends to be fine, and GoPros and action cameras are fine. It's just when you get in that low light situation where it gets kind of grainy and, like you said, it's usable, but it's not, when you put it next to really nice footage, it's not so usable.
And it breaks down. The quality breaks down for sure in low light, but you also, again, if it's not, like, you get a different, there's a lot, I guess there's a lot more color grading required if you're marrying up all these different cameras into one film or one video. So if I use the GoPro, I actually like the look of the GoPro on its own, but again, I put it next to the 4K DSLR footage and it just looks off. It doesn't marry. So it's different again. If I put it underwater, then there's no direct comparison with, the light quality. I guess if I spent, again, days or weeks editing each video, I could color grade and get them to match. But yeah, it's not the same.
Well, I think that speaks to your workflow, right? Because you just said earlier, if you're editing 2, 3, 4 hours before the thing's supposed to go live on YouTube, then you don't have time to be digging into 17 different kinds of footage and different qualities and making them look all the same. And that time just doesn't exist in your life or your schedule.
Yeah, and like my wife does help me film, and on like B-roll days, I'm always working alone, so all that footage generally is myself filming that. But if we go out shooting, like we shot waterfalls this week and actually released a video on my smaller channel a couple of days ago, behind the scenes. So she's filming me filming as well as capturing things, but I put it all on the computer and I've got 250 segments from 2 different cameras, and a lot of those were taken at the same time. But where in the file, in the folder, is it the same sort of image but slightly different angle that I'd like to put together? So I end up filming or editing this camera and this camera separately, because the first thing I do is I drag all of my clips into the timeline on Final Cut Pro on Mac. That's what I use. So I drag them all in instead of, picking and choosing. So they're sitting on the screen, and I really quickly, without audio, just go through every single clip from the beginning. I cut it off because there's always some camera shake where I touch the camera to turn it on. And then at the end, there's that as well. And again, if it's like a 3-minute clip and I want 5 seconds, I pick that 5 seconds out, I chop, delete, move on to the next clip. That's all happening literally like a couple of seconds. I might be able to edit each clip, and it's getting to that point just from experience. And then I'll have a whole bunch of clips that now maybe aren't a proper storyline. So how do I now move these things around? So I'll do that. And then I've got this other camera's footage that I have to do all the same things to, and then figure out where they fit into the timeline, the storyline. So it could take me a day to edit that kind of footage, which is frustrating. And find a lot of times, unless it's completely different angles, completely different perspective, then it's not worthwhile doing. So that's when we'll go out, and my wife will take a camera and we'll put maybe a 1-400 on there. And I'll be using a 16 to 35. So we've got such different footage that it actually makes sense to have both of the same thing that I can actually use together. So my lenses, so I got a 16 to 35. It's a Sony lens, which is, especially if I'm working inside the cabin, I need lots of light gathering, but I need that wide perspective. But not great, when I'm filming myself from a distance. It's just too far. And then I've got the 24 to 105. And I just got today, or just arrived in the mail today, the G Master, 100 to 400 Sony. Beautiful lens, and then a 2x extender coming. So that'll replace what I've been using on the Sonys. I've been using a Canon adapter with that Sigma 600. 150 to 600, I think it is. So that's really slow. This should be really fast, but it's a lens that I'll take out for wildlife and have the other other lenses for my close-up stuff, for my working stuff. And maybe I'll give my wife that, or she can use her Canon stuff, or one of the other Sonys, and put the Canon adapter on and use her really good Canon lenses.
You can never have too many cameras, so you might as well just get another whole new R5 setup and all that too. for your wife to run.
Well, I have to sell some of this stuff, like that 150 to 600. I'll never use it now. Got a 100 to 400 Canon or something here. Beautiful. Or 200, is it? Awesome lens. And hasn't. Oh, the 70 to 200. I don't think I've ever used it. Like it's so wasteful, but I don't know. It's one of the things I invest in. So the money goes back into the creation of the content, and that means better equipment. It's not necessary for everybody starting out, but if you're getting traction and you're making some money, it's paying for itself, then why not do the best? With anything in life, create the best thing that you possibly can create. If you're going to do something, do it as good as you can. That's how I'm feeling about this stuff. So it kills me to spend $500 on a body that's A7S3. I think it's like $500 or something, but
$5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you shopping?
Could I get your pro deal?
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Jason?
Yeah, I do actually, real quick, Shawn. So I see the passion for the wildlife side of things too. How often do you actually get to go out and focus on the wildlife side of things with everything else you have going on?
So the beauty of where I am is that I'm actually living in a forest, and I actually have wildlife all around me, and I can jump on, 4-wheeler or a snowmobile at this time of year, or go for a snowshoe or a ski and get into wildlife. If it's driving, within an hour or two, I can pretty much hit all of our Ontario game. So it's almost every day. Like I might start off the morning by shooting the deer like I did the other day, and then I'm working for the rest of the day.
How come I never see you out there? That'll happen. I'm overdue. I'm looking forward to the next time we can hang out.
Yeah, me too. The wildlife is, there was a trade-off. There was a short period, there's 3 years that I didn't have a dog. And much easier to fish and canoe and hunt other things and photograph. And when you have a dog who has a very high prey drive, it's hard. It's hard to get onto the wildlife, like around the cabin. Even like if we're not there for a couple of days, there's like moose tracks come literally mark in the front. Moose walk right over the porch, right across the front. Deer, same thing. Martin, they've got Fisher coming right up to the door of the cabin. But after once we settle back in, they're not. You don't see any of those except on trail camera at the other end of the property out on Crown land.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the answer. And there's days though that, my people say, well, don't you ever take a break? Well, yeah, our break is like, we'll just take off for the day and we'll just drive and go visit everywhere we know that there's wildlife or beautiful waterfalls or whatever. That's our hobby, and I love those days.
Yeah, that's neat. You're just living it.
That's what I say about the lifestyle. And if it's something you're that passionate about or interested in, then I think it's good for you and it's good for your family and everybody to be the best person you can be and the happiest person you can be. And if that means immersing yourself fully, and to me, nature is like right at the top and should or could be for most people, and then immerse yourself in that, and every day is like awesome.
I think for most professional wildlife photographers, it's the vast percentage of their life is devoted to it because it's how we want to live. It's what we want to experience. I mean, of course, there's downtime that we go visit family or friends or something else has to be done. But given the choice, obviously we have to catch up with the editing. But given the choice on any given day, I want to go find animals, photograph, to watch, sit down. I mean, I always crave going north to Algonquin. We've got some mature white pine in our property, but not the same kind of situation there where you get that whispering breeze through the pines as you sit on the rock looking at the lake. I mean, right there, it takes any stress and it evaporates.
Yeah.
That's where we want to go, right? So I love how you direct people to create content that feeds their soul, that authenticity comes through. As far as the YouTube stuff, there's some questions as far as you put up on Fridays. There's so many things about algorithms. Are there certain days of the week that are clear, or does it depend on the show, or is it just simply that your audience knows it's Friday after a period of time and that's all that's necessary? You could have picked a different day and might be as equally successful once that consistency is there. Or are there days that, like Wednesday, don't go there? Is there any experience or advice that way?
I think it's probably different for everybody, first of all, depending on the genre. Like if you're creating kids content, for example, you're going to want it like right after school or during the week. Weekends, people are busy, typically running around, and they're less predictable. And it also depends where your audience is. For myself, what I discovered is that Fridays work because people are, at the end of the week, they're unwinding, they want something to watch. And by doing something consistently, and I've rarely missed a Friday in the last 4 years, that's the program that they know they're watching every Friday night. Families, like as I'm creating family-friendly content, they can reliably sit in front of that TV every night and watch that show. And I haven't watched traditional TV in years. I don't know how many shows are on Friday nights or what I'm competing against or how predictable or how good the quality is of those shows. So all I know is that for me, the audience has come to expect that every Friday there's going to be something. Now, what I'm a little bit surprised at is it doesn't seem to matter what time of day on Friday now. And I think probably it did in the beginning. But as you say, people are now waiting for that to be posted. They know every Friday they're gonna typically find one of my videos. So I post it as often as I can if I have it ready at 6 a.m. Friday morning, because I have a global audience. So people over in the UK and Germany and Australia, a lot of people in those areas watching, and they're tuning in then. And then, as we get to North America, I get another uptick around 6 p.m. as people here in North America start watching, then that goes across the continent. So it's different, but I've had 3 or 4 videos on trending page on YouTube, and every one of those has been outside of that day, like Monday mornings, a couple of them, and a couple on Sunday evenings. So it's hard to say. I think probably I just happened to hit times where the competition maybe was lower, or my audience was just for what something worked out that people happened to be home that day. I don't know what. Like a lot of content, they say 10 o'clock when people are at work. A lot of people are watching stuff at work, and if you have a video that you're not talking in, they can do that.
Shh.
Yeah. And same
Thankfully,
with.
I don't get in trouble when I do that. Thankfully.
Yeah, exactly.
As I'm editing.
And that's like the not speaking thing is one of the things too. So I create 2 different types of content. Some I don't talk at all in, and on those videos I get a lot more interaction from people that don't speak English. So it's a broader audience, a much bigger audience.
And that's interesting. I've thought about the language barrier and how that it would still appeal to them. Right.
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I have a huge, like, probably, I think Turkey is probably like number 4 or 5 for demographics for the countries that watch the channel. And you can't understand when I'm speaking. If I speak too much in that video, I need to do closed captioning and then hope that they can translate it.
Wow, really interesting. Something I think about with YouTube versus traditional television networks and their shows, there's so many fictional elements to all those shows. They're fast-paced fictional dramas or thrillers or something, and then you have what they try with the reality shows, but they seem so hyped up. And it's a thrill, it's an adrenaline rush. But when you have a successful YouTube channel like yours, and like, I'll say this with a straight face, like we aspire to have someday, the audience knows it's real. The people watching know you're real. And what you're doing happened. There's that reality connection on a more personal level. They know every week that you're out there creating this content, and they can watch it on Friday. And sometimes they interact with you. They send you a message, and you reply back. It's just psychologically more of a positive connection with that content creator, those that are attentive to their audiences. And I think that's a big part of the driving force for successful channels to continue to grow. They develop a rapport, a relationship, right, with you as a content creator. It means something to them.
Me with them.
Of course.
I get so many comments, and I know a lot of the people now. Well, right. You guys online, but specifically commenters on the YouTube channels. I look for their comments. Like it's a nice community.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's one awesome thing about social media, thankfully. So another YouTube question, as far as creating content. Now, I understand for your show how longer clips make a lot of sense because people want to unplug and follow you. 5 minutes isn't going to cut it. 15 minutes won't do it. It's got to be long enough that they've sat down and really felt the vibe. And I think that, has a lot of merit. But I guess it's hard to comment on, a hard to ask question, because for your type of show, that makes all the sense in the world to have the longer length. But from your experience with YouTube across the platform, is the, advice you can give for the minimum length that people should target for a clip for, hoping it will be successful? Or are there any parameters that you would give advice on that way?
Well, I chuckled when you said about the other reality shows that are, fast-paced and dramatic, and that's typically because they're scripted or they create these situations. I don't know why people watch what I do, because I'm filming today, and I think all day I was putting oak floor boards in the workshop and doing a little gable end insulating and putting some things up there. And it's like 8 hours because it's so slow at this time of year with the cold and the snow and everything. Like everything is, you got to heat up literally pieces of wood and the tools over the fire just to be able to use them. And I'm like, people don't actually want to see this. Like, this is the most boring video ever. I can't post this. So it is different for channels like mine. Like, people want longer videos and they're okay with just zoning out to something that's boring like that. But you can't do that as a new channel. You have to be.
Life isn't boring, buddy. Just saying. And your life isn't. But yeah, okay. Sorry to interrupt. Please.
It's yeah, you basically make videos the length that they should be based on what you've done and how interesting it is. And until you build up a rapport with an audience, you can't expect them to sit through that boring stuff. And even on mine, you know, I would say 65% of the audience are not sitting there watching all of that. But those people can fast forward, where the people who want the longer content, if it doesn't exist, they can't fast forward. They can't slow it down. They have to only watch what you produce. So why not produce more and let them choose how much of it they want to watch? But don't put stuff in there like just for no good reason. Like, if it's not interesting even to yourself, or it's not beautiful. Like, I do long clips, like, 10-minute segments just of nature at the end of a video that a lot of people are tuning out for. But the people who really want that or want to relax, it's there. But if you did that as a new channel, you're just probably going to turn people off. So you want to stick to quick clips. Like, when I'm doing that type of video, 2 to 3, 4, 5 seconds, maybe each clip. And then you have to change camera angle. So I'm like, it's become second nature. But if somebody was new to do a channel, they wouldn't understand how many camera angles, how many times you need to move that camera. Even if you're sitting there working on one thing for half an hour, you should have moved that camera 5 or 6 times. Like, it's that important, because your audience will get bored and they'll fast forward or they'll click off.
So with that being second nature for you, is that always in your mind? You're like, okay, after these 3 nails, I'm going to go grab the camera and I'm going to move it over here. And then I'm going to work for 10 more nails and then I'm going to move it over here. Is that just a constant kind of thought process?
Yeah, somewhat, but it's depend. Like, usually you're doing something. You'll find that once you start filming in that fashion, that method, that if you're working, you're typically not doing one thing statically in one spot for very long. You have to go grab this tool or grab some more nails or do this or that. Every time you do that, that's when the camera gets moved. So sometimes, I mentioned, I think a clip I had today, it was like 40 minutes. I left the camera running because I was doing something that I can't run back and get the camera for. I'm using 5 seconds of that in the final edit. So I'm not going specifically to move the camera. I'm moving it when it makes sense to move the camera, because I'm up anyway. And then length, if you were just trying to target a length, though, Mark, to answer your question, YouTube wants people to stay on the platform. They want them to stay on your video, because as soon as they click off, there's a chance they're going to go somewhere else and get distracted. So over 10 minutes is a good target. They're going to try to put as many ads in as possible, which you need to keep an eye on, and don't let them do that. Pull them back out so you don't bore your audience with too many ads. Like, a lot of things that you would know intuitively, but if I watch your own attention span, what you're watching, what are you willing to sit through? How long is a clip are you willing to, like, if you start tracking yourself watching a YouTube video, see where you start to lose interest, like you are right now.
No, I'm ready. I have a question on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, okay.
No, as soon as you start drifting off, that if you were watching your own video, your mind goes somewhere else. That clip better change, or that video better end. Don't create long content just for the sake of creating long content. Create a life or a thing that you're doing that's interesting enough to become more than a 10-minute video. But my smaller channels, mostly like 5, 6, 7 minutes.
Okay. That's something that Michael's brought up over the years, is that when he's got a clip or put something together, a test he'll do is he'll have someone sit down and he watches them to see at what point they look away. Because we all are invested in our own product, right? We love our work. We want to watch it from beginning to end because of what we did to create it. But testing it on other people, family members, friends, whatever is convenient is a great way to learn about tweaking your show, anyone's show.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. Working on the YouTube content for Wild and Exposed, it's a learning curve. It's a learning process like all of these platforms are. And for some of them that the algorithms are changing. This is a new thing for us that we love putting out these podcasts on YouTube so people can watch us talk and see our interaction. And if we have product or anything, they can see it on the show. So we put out these long format ones with the hope that people will watch all of it. Obviously, not necessarily in one go, but the wonderful thing about YouTube and compared to watching your show on a network, I guess you could PVR it now, but historically it's gone. Whereas this, if you've got 20 minutes, you watch 20 minutes. It's going really well, but life's taking over. Pause. 4 hours later, or even the next day or two, they can come back and pick it up and enjoy the content that was waiting for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we like putting out these long podcasts this way. But your mention about the ads, like Shawn, okay, let's talk about this because this is new for us where we have, we want to do what we can at this point to try and have funding cover our production and someday make some profit for the efforts that we've put into this production the past 4 years. We love it. We're passionate about it, but we devote a tremendous amount of time to this show because we love doing it. But at some, it's got to make some money for the amount of time it takes out of our professional lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we now have monetization on YouTube. Now, people, it's not going to knock your socks off. I think we're at $35, so it's not a get rich fast scheme here by any stretch. But the idea is, we've just added, brought Tyler back on with the team to do some editing, some production stuff. We want to continue to evolve our product, and as I suggested on the last podcast, we have some the one that we just recorded, or it might be a couple from this one now. We have plans. We have big plans for YouTube. It's very exciting. So we want to keep investing time into the products that we're putting out in the different playlists on our channel. But with these long videos, when I put it up and when you select monetization in hopes that there be some funding to support the efforts, there's a whole pile of ads. And I didn't know until you just said this, because I work in these quiet times in my office, that I can control those ads. I figured that's just due to the duration of length. YouTube automatically put in those 10 ads for the first 2/3 slot time frame of our 1.5 hour podcast. So now, can you tell me how I can manage that better? And for those out there wanting to do their own YouTube channels, like how do you pull those ads or change them?
Yeah, it's hard to without having the platform in front of me that they created.
Okay.
But essentially, they're in your editor. I don't know how much you know. So if you go to when you're uploading the video, it allows you to select monetization, but there is one checkbox that says
well, I don't monetize it till I make it public. Is that a mistake? I don't hit the monetization toggle on or off until I select public. Sorry, I'm making you be a teacher here for a minute about this, but I've just...
So here's one. I have a lot of tangents, but like people complain about censorship on social media platforms, assuming they're like, these are, we're entitled to these things. These are all businesses, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. They're there to make money, and the platform wouldn't exist. So we can complain all we want about being censored, but the only thing we're being censored for typically is that the advertisers are reacting to their customer base who are telling them, we don't want to watch this, we don't want to see something. I'm not even going to pick a thing that happens in the world or happens on YouTube, but anything that they're not comfortable having their brand associated with, they're going to say, we don't want to advertise on videos that include that kind of content. So that censorship is coming from us, the people, the consumers who are choosing not to buy a product because we heard the CEO did this or that, or they don't agree with this or that. So when we choose to then monetize, we choose to participate on a platform and create content on a platform where we're getting paid through advertising dollars, we have to be aware that our boss is the platform and their boss is the advertisers, and that we have to satisfy them but also satisfy the audience and ourselves. So find a balance between those things. So when you choose to not monetize a video, YouTube's in the money of making business. Why would they bother to show that thing? And it's not censorship that they're not going to distribute that video to a broad audience, but they're going to want to show videos that make the platform money so that the platform can continue to exist. Because I believe YouTube still loses money for Google. I've never had a profitable year as far as I know. So we're, if we don't continue to support the advertisers, even as creators, then this platform might disappear. And that's not censorship. That's economics. It's business. So you should choose always to monetize any video that you want to get promoted or you want your audience even to find, because they won't even show your own audience. And now the other part of that, you need the reason you make long videos is because YouTube, like I said earlier, they want people to stay on that platform. So if you give them a 5-minute video and they watch 40% of that, that's hard. Well, it's only a couple of minutes that they're spending on that platform. If you put an hour-long video and the audience watches 30% of that, that's 18 minutes they've stayed on your video, and then YouTube can then show them some ads. And then you make money and they make money.
I don't object to the ads because I recognize their important role in the situation. It was just, and nor do I have any desire to necessarily cut them back, but if there were 10 ads in the first 40 minutes of the clip, I just didn't realize that the content creator had any play in choosing, okay, maybe we just do 8, or maybe we move this one. That was what I was getting at, because we had one listener comment. I mean, I think the vast majority of the audience recognizes the importance of the ads and how it plays for these platforms.
They don't. They don't. They don't. The reason it matters, and I'll tell you why you need to uncheck that box, is that when YouTube does that, that shows up in the timeline at the bottom of the video, that for every viewer, before they even click on the video, they can see how many little yellow dots are on the bottom line. They know that you have 10 videos in the first 40 minutes. They're like, I'm not wasting my time. I'm not sitting through that 10, because there's always double now, right? 2 advertisements per spot. So they're not going to sit through 20 or 30 ads to watch your video that might or might not be that compelling or interesting to begin with. So not talking specifically about anybody.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Thank you.
So hit monetization before you publish, but there's a checkbox, and I keep forgetting to uncheck it.
I didn't even know about this.
Well, it's in your default uploads. So go to your default uploads, and it's a tab over on the left in Creator Studio, and uncheck place automatically, because uncheck that place automatically, and then when your video is finished, what do you call it? Not rendering, but processing. When your video is finished processing, then you can don't hit publish, hit unlisted or private, but then go back to your editor and now go in and manually put your ads in. Now, if you're careful and you're willing to go back, leave place automatically on, and they'll put them in good spots, like typically a break or a transition in your content. For me, a lot of time it'll go from when I'm building to now nature scenes, so they'll put an ad right there. Problem is they do front load it and they put way too many, like every 3 or 4 minutes. So I'll go in there and then I'll just start deleting the ones between where I don't want too many, but I do like where they've placed one between, good at a good spot, a good transition. But I only want them like every 10 minutes, because I don't want to watch a video that's got ads, like 3 ads in the first 10 minutes. I'll click off of it typically at that point.
So like I said earlier, I've been watching an inordinate amount of YouTube here lately, and I've noticed on some of these guys that are spending a lot of time with that particular part of it, they're really, I think you can think about it during the edit too. So as we, these podcasts are pretty much free flowing and we just put it out as we record it, right? But if we're going to go produce a thing on how to shoot this or whatever, there's different times within your story where it's the perfect place for an ad. You know, if you're giving someone a thought process into what's going to happen in the next 10 or 20 minutes, you want to put it in there because you're going to want to go see that what's going to happen 10 minutes from now, right? So I've been seeing that a lot lately where creators are taking the time to say, you know, this is a perfect spot to put the ad. And I've seen it. I didn't know you could do that, Shawn. So that's awesome information. But being able to say, you can, am I correct? And you can actually move it to where you want it to go in once you select that?
Yeah. So YouTube is pretty good at finding those spots you're talking about.
Yeah.
I guess because they've got their AI actually knows what you're saying and they actually track that. It's just like they're getting really good at producing the thumbnail for you if you let them. So if you do place automatically, a lot of times they'll pick that spot anyway, but then you can go and check it. Yeah, you literally go into the editor and you can drag that thing by seconds in any direction you want.
And I don't see it a lot, but I see it enough where it's like, this person is totally paying attention and maximizing the opportunity to use the content correctly so that it keeps them for the ad. And they're going to stay for that. And then, of course, everybody can skip an ad if you want to. You don't have to watch the whole thing. I do, and to support the YouTubers because I want, and what I use it for is just like you did in the old days with regular TV. That's when you get them go to the bathroom, and that's when you take care of whatever. Let the ad play through to support your content creator, and then pick up the story when it comes back off that ad.
Some wonderful subscribers or followers will do that. Most won't. But you can also choose the type of ad, right? So if I put up like I did an hour-long nature video, I think last week, or I did a midweek one actually too this week, 12 minutes or something. I unselected skippable and non-skippable ads. So the only thing it would show is banners. The banners, you could keep watching right through a banner, right? You don't have to, there's no action and there's no interruption in the music or the scene. So I don't want to interrupt a nice peaceful video with an ad in the middle, like especially if someone's kind of zoning out to it, puts it on loud and walks away just to listen to it. And then an ad pops up in the middle of that.
Right.
You got to be careful. So what kind of ad, how many, and where they're located. And, you know, most people aren't watching your video to the end, so you get very little value for the ads at the end. But if you let YouTube put all the ads they want to put in there, like 40 ads in a 40-minute video, you make a ton of money, but hardly anybody watches it by some point because they just click off by the third minute.
Unless you have alligators eating other alligators or something crazy.
It's a science, right? I mean, really, all the details, all the layers.
Well, I think Shawn hit it on the head, right? It's just a professional thing. It's a business, and you just gotta we have to treat it as a business. Just as much as YouTube is treating it as a business, and you just got to focus in on. But it's just a learning process too. I mean, being fortunate enough to talk with you, Shawn, is super helpful just for us, but I think for the whole audience too. And the cool thing about YouTube is you can learn how to do any of this. If you want to know how to place ads, you just type in YouTube, how do I place ads in my video? And there's probably 40 people that are showing you how to do it out there. So it's a thing that builds on itself, helps itself, and I don't know. I think it's going to take over the world.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, it's hard to buy for us. Like my wife, I think, has finally agreed she's going to give up her 5D Mark III, I think it is. Took awesome photos, but now she's looking at them compared to what I'm getting now off of these Sonys. It's like, okay, now even that's left behind. But just like she'll take photos and then I take video all day. And it's like, what are we going to do with these photos? Not you guys do something completely different, but I mean, for the average person, hardly anybody wants to watch those or look at photos because there's so many great photos out there too, with everybody with a camera in their hands capturing things that are unique just because of the volume of people out there doing it. That's hard to stand out. Where video, podcasts are the thing too. Like they're higher weight, like 10 times the amount of people, 10 times the volume of podcasts being listened to compared to being YouTube videos being watched. So that's great too, but still photos they're a tough sell now. So video is where it's at, and things are going to continue to evolve, and you can keep learning. But at the end of the day, it comes down to whether you've got a unique lifestyle or a unique hobby or a unique product, something that's different than anybody else. because the more similar you are to somebody else, the least interesting other people are going to find that. So, and that's not intuitive. I don't think. I know when I started the YouTube channel, if you go back, you'll see some like local hiking videos and stuff, and canoe routes, like how to canoe this route, thinking I'm being helpful. But the amount of people that want to be helped and the amount of competition for people that are actually helping them is low compared to the number of people that want to be entertained. So, and then you want to be entertained with something that's unique to you, not something that you experience yourself every day. That's just the life I'm trying to escape.
And that's great for the global audience, the urban audience who want to experience the remote wilderness that you live in and that lifestyle. So
you take it for granted, right? Because that's the other mistake, is thinking locally. We're thinking too focused. So you can go really deep on a subject and become an expert in that, and that's awesome. And I think you guys have the ability to go do that on one hand, but also to take people into the field with you on the other hand, so they're experiencing that vicariously. So you have two ways to approach it, and I would be doing that, like with people with skill sets like you guys have and access to places that you have that most people don't. A lot of people like myself focus too locally, forgetting that what a lot of Canadians do on a weekend, which is what I started doing on the YouTube channel. It's like, hey, this is not interesting. All my friends do this every weekend. Why would people watch this? But you forget that there's 7 billion people around the world that don't do that. 7 billion people, that there are probably 6 billion people that don't experience the snow that we experience, or the caribou you've got, or the elk that you've got in your background. It's like, I haven't even experienced that, so I want to see that stuff.
It's in the books. I can't wait to do it with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd said last year with you guys, like that was a trip of a lifetime. Like, I'm really missing out not being able to do that this year or last year.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there'll be hopefully other opportunities.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's good.
Lots more opportunities. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to take us behind the scenes. And really, there were some nuggets in there that were quite enlightening as far as YouTube and production as well. So before winter's over, I hope we have a chance to cross paths and hang out and catch up a little bit. But in the meantime, I'll enjoy seeing your sweating it out and hard work up there on your new homestead, and watch it from a creator's point of view and enjoy that process that you're working on as well and how you do it.
Well, it's been a pleasure as always with you guys. I don't drive as much as I used to, so I'm back to what you said about long content. I'd probably take 3 or 4 trips by the time I listen to a full podcast from you guys, but really enjoying what you're doing.
Well, much appreciated. If you're not already following Shawn's work on YouTube, it's worth checking out. He's got 2 channels. He's got My Self Reliance, which is super popular, seriously, and the Shawn James channel. My Self Reliance, he takes you into his world. He immerses you in the Canadian wilderness where he's living off the grid and building a homestead with various outbuildings, doing so much by hand, the old-fashioned way. And so many people really get wrapped up in his show because, especially this year, it's a great de-stressor. You can just watch however long you want. They're long episodes. It's quiet. He's not talking much during the My Self Reliance episodes. It's just his work in the wilderness. It may be a canoeing trip in the remote forests and lakes of northern Ontario, and I mean, it's breathtaking countryside. His variety of camera angles and using drones and the lifestyle he has with his golden retriever on his homestead and building these outbuildings and what he harvests and collects off the land. It's all very interesting, and it's a super popular channel because of that. It's, people used to have as a joke, right? I mean, when there are all those channels on cable TV, there was one channel with the fireplace playing just in the background. It's so soothing for people to watch. My Self Reliance channel takes you to the place where the fireplace was made and what the life was like all around that. And you can just chill out and enjoy Shawn's world. His other channel, the Shawn James channel, is growing exponentially in popularity as well, and there he takes you behind the scenes at creating his more popular channel, My Self Reliance, talks more about his production and his philosophies on life, which are quite insightful as well. Well, from the Wild and Exposed team, from your hosts this week, Michael Mauro, Jason Loftus, and myself, Mark Raycroft, thanks for listening. You can find more of our content on Instagram, Facebook, on our website at wildandexposed.com. Once again, a reminder of the great merch on the store that Mr. Mauro worked so hard to put up. It's good stuff. We've ordered it, we've tested it, and it helps support our efforts. So for those of you that have ordered and sent Instagram photos that we've shared on our stories, that's cool. Much appreciated. It's great to see, and thank you. Our podcast, as you know, audio podcasts come out every Tuesday, and you can watch our exciting YouTube versions on Fridays. Until next time, you've been listening to Wild and Exposed Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
We got our windows down, driving down the 405, sing along to the radio. We're gonna make it someday, nothing's gonna get in our way. We will be the biggest band in town.